Hey everyone, I'm Jeremy Suriel, CTO at Kustomer. Listen to how we've improved developer velocity and scaled to millions of messages per day by switching to MongoDB. One of the things we liked about it was that we could work fast, we could build software, leverage MongoDB, and then be confident that when we needed to scale in the future, we would have that tool in our toolbox.
Welcome to the show. On today's episode, Jeremy Suriel, CTO and co-founder of Kustomer. It's Kustomer with a K. Kustomer is an omnichannel SaaS CRM platform that reimagines enterprise customer service, delivers standout experiences, and it's built with intelligent automation using AI and ML, and of course, MongoDB. It's a great discussion with Jeremy to learn how Kustomer was built, a little bit about Jeremy's journey. Stay tuned. Hope you enjoy this episode. Well, Jeremy, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to get to talk to you. Before we begin, would you introduce yourself to the audience? Let folks know who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. So, and by the way, to start off, thank you for inviting me to do this podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Again, I'm Jeremy Suriel. I'm the co-founder and CTO at Kustomer. Obviously, as a co-founder, I've been here since day one and uh, been a part of building some of the technology that we use today and the product that we use today. And since we've grown, I spend a lot of time with the engineering team. I'm in the product. I'm continuing to build out the technology, continuing to help on architecture, think about our infrastructure, how we scale the team, how we scale the application, how we stay innovative and relevant in the market, all of the above.
And so for folks that are not familiar, it's Kustomer with a K. And tell folks, what does Kustomer do?
In a nutshell, we're a CRM platform for customer service. So, that's a lot, right? The elevator pitch is this. And basically, we believe organizations can actually know everything about their customers. And we do this simply by making our product smart and simple. Really want to remove the barriers between a customer that has a need and the actual solution to that need. So we've built a platform that has omnichannel conversations. We leverage AI ML to surface actionable insights, and we let customers customize everything from the data model, business logic, conversation flows, and presentation.
Who's your primary customer? Who are your target customers?
We do a lot of business with e-commerce, D2C, so direct-to-consumer type companies. We initially started out sort of in the lower end, but we had a lot of success with some of the larger players. So, we have customers like Ring.com as an example, which is Amazon. We have a lot of interesting players, mostly in that space, mostly with e-commerce and D2C. Although there's nothing specific to that it really could be any industry.
How long has Kustomer been around? How long have you been doing this?
So we've been around since 2015. Brad and I, so Brad is my co-founder and CEO. We've been in this space for over 20 years, but specifically focused on customer for the last 6.
And like you said, you were responsible for building out the product initially?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Brad and I we're very technical. We're product people. We're, engineers. So, from day one, we actually basically split up the work. We were planning to just build this thing out for, 6 months plus and just heads down and before we raised the dollar. So we split things up and, I focused more on the back end. He focused on the front end. I guess it's a good thing, but we were able to really quickly raise money and we just, sped up our hiring. But we stayed on the back end. We stayed building product for a long time, even after we started hiring. So, and I think, by the way, engineers really love that. Our experiences, engineers like to be part of a company that's, where their founders care about the technical detail, they care about the product, right? And so, I've received a lot of feedback from engineers, during the hiring process that, they love the fact that we're still in the code.
I'm curious about that transition, though. As someone who was focused on building product and writing software, talk about the transition from that to a leadership position.
I've done startups for most of my life, right? And so I guess I'm used to this situation where You just solve problems. You fill gaps. You find solutions to the biggest problems, right? And so, for me, it was very natural. Yes, I love technology. I love building software. But as we're scaling the business needed me to be in different places, right? And that's great. And I love being able to do that. Right? I think that's what makes the job exciting, right? Is you don't know what you're going to get during a day, right? You're going to be maybe pitching a VC, maybe you're explaining the product to some end customer, or you're fixing a bug. So I think I love all of that, right? I think it's really fun. That's really what excites me about being an entrepreneur and start building a startup is being able to do all of those things.
So I want to talk a little bit about the product that you built and how much has the product changed itself? Let's talk a little bit about how it was written to begin with, and then maybe talk about some of the changes that have you've undergone.
Yeah, sure. I think we've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in this space, and I've been a part of a number of startups in the past, and in this customer service space, and seeing what worked, what hasn't worked. Heard a lot from small, medium, large customers on what was missing, right? Saw the impact that an architecture would have on a growing team over time, whether it was a monolithic application or maybe certain levels of automation. And when we started Customer, we wanted to obviously, like you would do anything new, right, is learn from the past, right? If you're ever maybe, I don't know, move to a new house or you're building a house, you're probably going to, exactly what you're not going to do, what you will do. So similarly, we wanted to take all the great things out there, all the great technology out there, leverage as much as we can, and avoid all the mistakes and use all the cool new stuff, managed services, tech that we could to move fast, right? As any startup needs, you need to be able to move fast, hire quickly. And so we built the system from the ground up with those things in mind, right? So, we had a lot of experience with AWS Cloud. That was a no-brainer for us. We had a lot of experience with different database platforms. Some of the pitfalls of those platforms, whether they be relational databases that over time, when you had billions of records in a table and you needed to make a change, that was a big problem, right? And so we knew going into this that from a technology perspective, we're going to need something a little bit more flexible than that, right? We don't want to slow down when we know we're going to need to make changes over time. Or let's say our use case needed to allow that flexibility, right? We built it from the ground up, microservice-based architecture, leveraging container services. Again, MongoDB was a big part of this, the technology decision. JavaScript and Node, we looked out and saw some of the trends going on. And so JavaScript and Node.js and React.js, these things were all trending and still very much doing pretty well today. You need to think about hiring, the technologies you choose, they need to sort of like work well together. They need to be able to support what you're trying to build. I think we did a pretty good job there, right? To this, so we haven't really changed much architecturally. I mean, we've made a lot of improvements to automation. Initially we didn't use Terraform. Now all of our infrastructure is Terraform based. We used to self-host MongoDB, and now we use MongoDB Atlas. And so, we just continually improve things. There's always improvements to make. I would say like on the foundation, we made a lot of right decisions. And you can't, there's no crystal ball. There's always things you could do better, but for the most part I think we made the right decision. So really sort of stay the same. I mean, with respect to MongoDB, one of the best practices is sort of waiting as much as you can on the sharding. One of the things we liked about it was that we could work fast, we could build software, leverage MongoDB, and then be confident that when we needed to scale in the future, we would have that tool in our toolbox if we needed to, right? So only until recently have we started actually sharding some collections.
So flexibility, scalability, obviously high availability was a key factor.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think We use the word trust, what I mean, brand trust and scalability, security, reliability, availability. These are all parts of trust. And from day one, we spent a lot of time thinking about that, whether it's guaranteed message delivery. We run all our systems, including our databases, across multiple availability zones. So yeah, availability is critical.
And you mentioned you started out with MongoDB on-premise. Um, have you transitioned to a service-based or a managed service base?
Yes, yeah. So yeah, we started out with on-premise. I think it was before Atlas was around. I guess we had the commercial enterprise license, and it was great. It ran really well. We set up it was a single cluster, on our one production environment at the time. It was great. It worked well, and periodically, as you're starting out, you don't have as many customers. It's not as difficult, let's say, to manage. Maybe starting out immediately. We developers would run MongoDB services locally, so we didn't really need to worry about spinning up, dev environments in the cloud at that point. We had a small testing infrastructure, non-production infrastructure. So yeah, it was fine. It was great. We had a self-hosted model, and it did the job. Every once in a while we had to manage things and spend some time, making sure it scaled. But as we were growing, obviously that became a bigger concern, right? We started hitting or approaching what I would say approaching limits or thresholds that required us to spend more time and to give it some more thought. So that's sort of when Atlas really became something we took a serious look at and saw a lot of advantages from a velocity perspective.
Are you comfortable talking about the numbers? Like how big is your implementation today? And maybe use terms like transactions or events rather than customers if you're comfortable with that.
In terms of documents, we process, I would say, hundreds of millions of documents per day, right? And so a document for us might be anything from like an event, like a customer was updated or a conversation was updated, to an actual customer itself, or customer record or conversation record or a message record. So, I'd say in the orders of hundreds of millions of those documents each day being processed.
So looking back at your journey, were there any pitfalls or anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, I think there's always like little things that if I feel like if you don't if you ever looked at code 6 months later or your architecture 6 months later and you're like everything's good, you're probably not learning. Yeah, this things I could see us doing differently. Just small little things, right? Like things like our unique identifiers, right? I mean, that's actually one of the benefits of MongoDB is having sort of these globally unique identifiers, and we were very happy to start being able to have that natively with the database platform we're using, unlike some of the other more traditional relational databases. But it would have been great if we did some additional things to maybe make the application lookups and know which type of object it was within our own ID scheme. Added to that. I think that's sort of one little minor thing. Um, Tracking some interesting tracking that would have been a lot easier if we had done it earlier. Internal metrics on some of the data. I think it would have been a lot easier from a cost perspective, or being able to charge usage-based pricing, that sort of type of thing. But I think for the most part, knock on wood, we feel pretty good. We feel pretty good about what we've built and how we've built it. And so, a lot of the things that when we're making changes, many times were expected things, right? Were anticipated. We anticipated having to shard our database. We anticipated having to split some collections out into their own database clusters, right? So we anticipated a lot of things. We knew maybe over time, much like we do today, I can say things that maybe Atlas doesn't have today that we anticipate will happen in the future, and we're looking forward to seeing those things so we can take advantage of it, right? So I think there's a lot of that happening where less what I would call like a mistake and more okay, it's time to pay that debt, or it's time to go and do this thing that we knew we were going to need to do at some point.
So you're using MongoDB Atlas today. What other features in the Atlas platform are you leveraging?
So yeah, I mean, we're using, I think we have like, sort of a basic implementation of MongoDB Atlas for the most part. We have multiple projects in our production environment with what we call pods, point of deployments. So there's actually two pods, primary pods in production today. Each pod will have multiple clusters, multiple Atlas clusters in them, and each cluster is sort of your typical cluster, at least up until recently was sort of your typical 3-node cluster. And recently we've started sharding a few of our collections. In terms of Atlas functionality, we've taken, historically, I mean, we leverage the ability to spin up clusters from a backup. That's been amazing. Really cool functionality that saved us a boatload of time. It's definitely not something that we built tools around, and it was just super easy and quick to do from the interface. Um, there's been many times where, let's say, there's an index missing or some bad query, whatever, and we can use the real-time performance tools built into Atlas console to quickly find the culprit, stop it if we want immediately, and know exactly how to fix it. Basically give us sort of the target of where we need to look in the code and how to fix it. So, things like that. We use the cloud provider storage, backup solution, basic, some of the basic stuff, but big time savers, right? The index rolling, so the ability to create a new index and it automatically starts applying to secondaries and flips to primary. These are things we did not build tooling around. For a self-hosted model, we would have had to. So it was nice to have just baked in. And then just basic things like when we're creating the cluster, hey, we can have disk storage scaling. We could do cluster tiered scaling. I mean, I just don't even know how we would do that if we were doing it ourselves, right? So, that I don't know. Yeah, that would be a big investment of tooling for us, I think, if we were to try to build that. So just basic things like that to to have access to right in the beginning of building a cluster.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've had experience in this space before. Um, were you a part of another startup that launched a similar service or something in the same space?
Yeah, I mean, we Brad and I were co-founders of a previous startup called Assistly that was in the space. It was we don't really think of ourselves as another Assistly. I mean, it's very different what we're trying to do now, how we have a platform with customization of data and timelines, etc. But it's a similar space. So yeah, we've definitely we have experience sort of tackling a similar problem with different technology.
So I did have the great pleasure to speak with a consulting engineer here at MongoDB, and he talked about all of the amazing things that he gets to see in terms of problem solving and training and teaching folks. Were you able to leverage the professional services team as a part of your migration?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think one of the things I mentioned recently was the sharding initiative, and so we tapped into the professional services and consulting services team, and we there was a point where they came in, um, they spent multiple days with our team. We were able to just go through different questions. They took a look at our database, our schema, and really we were focused on things like sharding strategies, archiving strategies. Obviously, if there's any quick wins, anything that they noticed, and it was amazing, right? It was amazing for many reasons. Obviously, I think we can get a lot of benefits out of getting their expertise. It was just great from a team perspective to be able to have the team be able to interface with those folks and ask them questions. I think it was just great from that perspective as well. So yeah, all around great experience. We've leveraged that service twice now.
So you mentioned microservices, you mentioned Node.js. What other tools are you leveraging as a part of the application architecture?
Yeah, I think look, so we're heavy into Docker and containerization, so and that allows us to move pretty fast in terms of tooling and automatic deployment, testing, making sure you can mimic the environments locally as they are in production. We're using Elasticsearch for a number of search related use cases. Basic searching within the application for different user personas, analytics, logging internally, elk. So, Elasticsearch for a lot of things, stream and pub sub event processing. So, I mentioned those event documents. Our entire backend is event based. So we're constantly publishing events for everything that happens in the system. And then we have worker containers that might be subscribed to those events to do different things. We also have streaming, so leverage Kinesis streams to be able to do bulk processing. Um, yeah, so lots of different technologies all over the place to solve different problems.
Yeah, and it sounds like a great mix of technologies, like a really great group of frameworks put together. I imagine is it difficult to find individuals that have the expertise that you need?
We primarily look for, depending on the role, if it's front end, maybe looking specifically at someone with React experience. If it's back end, ideally looking for folks with Node.js experience in production, right? Now, most of the times, we don't expect people to have experience with everything within our stack, right? So, we look for smart people who love what we're doing, want to be part of what we're doing, and have some level of experience with our backend technologies. Not we never really find anyone that has everything. Um, every once in a while, you'll come across folks with like a very a high ratio of matching technologies that they have experience with, but most of the time we don't. So we're really just looking for smart people who have some level of experience with it, who are into what we're doing.
Hmm. And can I assume that you are hiring?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where would people go to find more information?
Yeah, it's customer.com/careers. And there's an engineering section on the top left. We have all the open roles, everything from engineering managers, looking for data engineers, senior software engineers. Um, yes, we are hiring.
Okay, great. Well, we'll get the word out there, and if you're listening, make sure you check the show notes. I'll include links there. So, any advice for folks that are considering launching a product in, well, maybe not the same space, but launching a startup? Um, any learnings you'd like to share?
Look, just at a high level, obviously you're going to need to move fast. You're going to need to hire people, right? Company's all about the people. And so, specific to technology, whatever technologies you do choose, I think a major factor is going to be your ability to hire and the people you hire's ability to use those technologies in addition to how those technologies solve your problems, right? So it's definitely a number of things that need to come together when thinking about the technologies you're using. And, you know, whatever it is that you're building, ideally, you'll probably want to spend as much time on those problems and less time on plumbing. So unless you need to own every single aspect of managing any service, whether it be MongoDB or Elasticsearch or Redis or anything, question whether you should be using a managed service for that because you can gain a lot of velocity by leveraging those things that exist today, right? Whether it's because there's experts there who know exactly how to manage it, whether it's because there's a lot of tooling already available off the shelf that they are exposing for you to make that management a lot easier. Maybe it's setting up development and testing environments. Maybe they've handled things like security or making things like alerting and monitoring easier. So these are all things you're going to have to solve. So spend more time solving your actual business problem and less time on those things.
That's great advice. Well, Jeremy, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me. Any final words you'd like to share before we wrap?
No, I just think, look, I appreciate being on the podcast. I love MongoDB. I've used it for a while. It's been great. I think it's a big part of our success as a business, as a product. I'm looking forward to continuing to use it. So again, I appreciate you being a part of this.
Well, thanks again. Thanks so much to Jeremy for joining us today. Learned a great deal about the Kustomer platform. If you want to learn more, visit Kustomer, that's Kustomer with a K, kustomer.com. You can also find out more about the career opportunities available at Kustomer by visiting kustomer.com/careers. If you enjoyed what you heard today, make sure you subscribe, like, share the episode, and consider giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts. You can give us a star rating and provide some feedback to let us know how we're doing and what you'd like to hear. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.